What's going on, beautiful people? Welcome back to the 817 podcast, where we talk about the lovely city of Fort Worth, Texas. We get into politics, business, culture, news. If it impacts you as a Fort Worthian, we discuss it. We give you one big story, 3 short stories, wins, losses, and actions. Today, our big story is with Tarrant Young Dems, and today we have the president, Hunter Griffin, and the vice president, Emeri, Calloway. What is going on, beautiful people?
What's going on?
It's been good. I've been seeing you guys out at your events, out at Commissioner's Court, but it's cool to have you guys in the podcast.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
And I'm so glad to find out that 3 of the 4 of us are left-handed. That's also really tight. Like,
We're finally taking over.
There's a majority in this room.
Yeah.
Not a common thing to have happen.
Yeah.
Well, every time we start the podcast, we always start with what is your Fort Worth story. Hunter, you live in, where are you from?
I'm from East Texas originally, a small town called Mineola.
Wow.
Near Tyler, Texas. That's the bigger town, I say.
Yeah.
I live
How do you spell Mineola?
Mineola. And
wow.
Yeah, there's a debate of what the name comes from, of like if it's the guy who's founded its daughters, 2 names put together, or they're debating it. But
Yeah. So what's your Fort Worth story?
My grandma has lived in Arlington, and my mom is from Arlington. She graduated from Arlington High School and everything. So after high school, I moved in with my grandma at the age of 18 in Arlington, in East Arlington, near the Highlands. And then I started working in Fort Worth at the airport, DFW airport.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I was working there for about 2 years as a cargo screener at Qatar Airlines. And then I got involved in Tarrant Young Dems, and then I started doing a lot more just campaign work and stuff like that in Fort Worth. And now I work actually at the Trinity Metro's Tex Rail
cool.
in Fort Worth. Well, I haven't never lived in Fort Worth.
I did not know that about you.
Oh, yes.
That's very exciting.
Yeah, I was actually at the bus system. I was a bus driver first.
Okay.
And that was very short lived, about 6 months. And then now I'm a conductor on the Tex Rail.
Fantastic.
So, yeah.
As someone who works in the transportation industry in the city, what would be some of your thoughts or like advice you would want commoners to know who use the services?
To use it more, I think that's the big thing. I think it's a lot more used than people realize, first of all. But of course, I think we could use more ridership, because more ridership means more funding for for all of it, for the buses, for the Tex Rail, everything.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Awesome. What about you, Emeri?
Well, I was born, unfortunately, in West Texas, but my family migrated
What's
to
town?
Lubbock,
Lubbock.
the town of the Texas Tech Red Raiders.
Yeah.
Which my family is mostly fans. I don't claim to that though. But I was let's see, probably since I was 6, I've lived in the DFW area. I live in North Fort Worth right now. Queer kid growing up in Fort Worth, not always the most comfortable, particularly where I live in a suburban area. Hasn't been the most welcoming, but you know what? I'm here. We're making change. We're making strides with the Tarrant County Young Dems and a lot of other places. So we hope to continue the progress there.
Yeah. Tell us about what Tarrant Young Dems does, and how can people kind of know about it and get involved in the work?
Well, we started up back in 2022, or at least I did, and then Emeri came along in 2023, right?
Okay, pretty recently.
Yeah.
Did it exist before that?
It did, but like, let's just say my election had 3 people at it. And I've never actually been to it.
And you won a majority?
Yeah, I won 100% of the votes.
It's like back at Mineola. You're like, I was 3 of my class.
Yeah.
There's only 3 of you.
Yeah, it was actually like easier to win the Young Dem election than like the Mineola mayor. But basically, I was like, I never been to a meeting, a Tarrant Young Dem meeting, where I wasn't the president. Basically, I showed up to a meeting and they were like, "Hey, we need a leader of the club," and they were like, "Do you want to be it?" And then I was like, "Sure," because I was looking to get involved, because it was kind of around 2021, 2022, and like stuff was finally reopening and stuff, and I was trying to get more involved in just like helping the Tarrant County shift more left. And that was the way I could insert myself, as become president of Tarrant Young Dems. And so right now we have about 500 members on like official members, and then we have about maybe like 40 to 70 people show up to our meeting. So so from 3 to 50 people per meeting is something I'm really proud of. It's one of my, I think, best life accomplishments and stuff, and I'm really proud of just everything we've done so far.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
How'd you get involved? Did you guys know each other before, or how's this
So I've always been a political junkie at heart, probably from too young of an age.
And where'd you get that from?
So my mom was always involved, at least watching the news at the very least, and she always taught me to come up with my own conclusion, to ask questions of authority, and just be open-minded, of all beliefs, whether I agree with the person or not. So that was always ingrained in me from a young age. So I think that's a lot of it. In another life, that's what she wanted to be doing, what I'm doing right now. So I think that had a lot to do with it. But I just jumped in, and I guess it was the Beto Senate campaign in 2022. I got thrown on a block wall all by myself and just jumped right in. And then I went to a meeting, and I was like, "This is awesome. This is awesome. This is what I want to do." And it's just very connecting. And once you do it, you're just addicted to it. So that's how I got started.
Did you say block walking?
Yes.
And you got sent out all by yourself?
Yes, I did.
That's kind of terrifying.
It is terrifying, but also like I do it all the time now. And I try not to partner. I tried to partner people up together, so it's not as frightening.
Intimidating.
Or intimidating, particularly in like areas of the suburbs. But yeah. That's how I got started in Tarrant County.
I think the very first time I ever block walked, I'd never done it before. Yeah. So I was like new. And then when you are elected and then you go block walk again and you have a track record, then you're like knocking on doors, man, is this person mad about this decision or mad about that decision? Yeah. But I love the feeling of being excited to meet new people behind those doors. Mm-hmm. So I can feel that vibe from
I've had some interesting experiences.
Yeah, a lot of stories
from block walking.
Yeah.
So how did you guys get from 3 to 50 to 70 people kind of showing up? I've been able to attend maybe one or two meetings and just get to see all the young faces, the diversity, the youthfulness, the excitement. How'd you guys curate that?
I would say it definitely didn't happen overnight. It was hard. When we started up, I just started inviting like my friends basically. Yeah. Like I don't know who else to reach out to. So a big part of it was just like reaching out to different communities and stuff, and showing up at different community events and stuff, and finding like-minded individuals that maybe want to help us flip this county. So it was a lot of just like going to other like club events, and also just finding like nonprofit organizations like Tarrant for Change and Sunrise, and just kind of all coming together. And because we're kind of just like, if you go to all those different meetings and stuff, like there's a lot of like overlap of membership. So I think just like connecting with the community would be my answer. And also showing up as well. Yeah. Like I feel like a lot of just the work we do, like it gets maybe some like news coverage or something, and then people are like, oh, I saw y'all on this, so I decided to come out and stuff. So I guess that's a big thing, just community, and just doing stuff, and then people see.
Yeah. Emeri, what would you say is kind of your guys' like biggest kind of accomplishments, or you feel like y'all were a part of progress as an organization?
Definitely just to first off build off 100 communities where our power is at. And we need to build on that every chance we have, whether it be from Tarrant for Change, any organization is willing to put in the work with us, because that is how we're going to, as Hunter said, push this county more left, which is what we deserve, the residents of Tarrant County deserve. But also, personally, one of my biggest wins for the Tarrant County Young Dems is when the Commissioner's Court, mostly Tim O'Hare, tried to shut down early voting sites on college campuses. Mm-hmm. I voted on my college campus. It was one of the ones that were trying to be eliminated, and that was not going to stand for me or for our members or for Hunter or for any of the college students or senior citizens who go to these college campuses to vote in Tarrant County. So we stood up hard against that, and we won. And there's a reason why Tim O'Hare was trying to take away our right to vote, because he was scared of our power, and he's going to do it again, and we're going to be ready to take him on when he does so.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He's definitely going to try again.
Yeah.
And it's probably even going to be harder to beat him this time, just because the court's different than it was last time.
Yeah, a lot of our episode today's, when we look at it, I mean, he obviously, y'all, where I feel like I started building connection with you guys was seeing you guys at the public meetings for the racial gerrymandering that was taking place at all the precincts.
Yeah.
And then also now the whole LGBTQ marker and that historical marker, and now you have this whole how they're changing that commission and adding more people to it. He seems more and more pressed to do his power. So what is some of the strategy or things you guys are thinking as it seems like he's making it harder for us?
From Tim O'Hare's perspective?
Yeah.
Well,
or even Republicans as a whole.
I think, Tim O'Hare and Republicans as a whole, I think their big thing is like suppressing the vote. And they're doing that in Tarrant County, you see, by just like trying to persecute people who like are just going out and voting and going out of their way and spending money on that. And people see that and now they're scared to come out and vote. So I think that's one of the big things that come to my mind is that they don't, like, Republicans don't care about democracy. I think they've shown that nationally and locally. And that's something that we have to fight against because otherwise we're going to lose our democracy.
Mm-hmm. As you guys think about it, you guys are trying to make progress, but while you guys are making progress, they're making it harder.
Right. First off, I think protecting Precinct 1 and Precinct 2, particularly Precinct 2 in this upcoming 2026 election is going to be absolutely critical. Also, another thing is getting a good candidate, better than a good candidate, a candidate that can raise money and can unite the people all across Tarrant County to run against Tim O'Hare. That is a critical seat. Even people at the state party level are looking down at that seat and how critical that is to flip here in Tarrant County. Now, whether that's possible, that's to be seen, but we need to put all our resources in that as possible because Tim O'Hare has way too much power. He's a tyrant in Tarrant County, and we deserve better. And we need to fight. We need to fight like hell to get him unelected.
I just think that it's powerful to see young people getting this involved because for years and years and years, what I was hearing was young people were just leaving. And, I gave birth to 2 Texans who have left. And so that's kind of the side of it that I have seen. So I know you guys were born in Texas, are Texans. And what I've encouraged people to do is not just cede to the folks that are trying to make it more difficult for us. So do you see a movement of young people staying here? Because I feel like we as older people I as an older person, I'm the only old person here, have focused so much on young people are just leaving and going to places where these things are already happening.
Yeah, like it's a lot of your members.
I mean,
Texans.
honestly, I want to say that you're incorrect in that.
I hope I am.
But I don't know. I like I said, I wish I could say you're wrong in the fact that we want to stay and we want to fight in Texas, but also, like, just as a human being here, or just as a Democrat here in Texas, particularly here in Tarrant County, it can be so defeating and depleting for your mental health and for a person that is in this fight 24/7, constantly taking on battles such from Tim O'Hare, Beau French, who needs to resign, way past yesterday. I think it's a real tough challenge, and honestly, like I said, I honestly wish I could say you were wrong in that fact, but I don't know. I mean, we have members that have left, which is understandable. Also, another aspect of that, even if they don't leave Texas, they leave DFW because there's not any good infrastructure to offer them jobs in the political sphere. Working for Democrats in Tarrant County or DFW at large, either go to Austin or Houston. That's another aspect that we lose young people that are really involved in politics here in DFW.
That is a big issue, yeah. That we see a lot.
Yeah, it's when you look at the people who kind of come to you meetings, do you hear stories of that they grew up here, or is it some new faces? People like, I just moved here, or I went to college here.
It's kind of, I would say, like, it's a mixture of all that. I feel like there's not just one person who shows up. There's of course staffers, and those are kind of the most come and go type because they get a job, and there's not a lot of Democratic jobs in Tarrant County. Sadly, we're trying to change that, But I feel like a lot of the places that we've just tried to grab from, like spaces, is like young people who like live and work and kind of want to build their lives in Tarrant County or in Fort Worth or in Arlington or wherever they are in Tarrant County. So I think we have a good amount of membership that are here to stay. We do have some that come and go because that's just the nature of just being young. People are more frequently to move if they're young. But I would say a lot of our members are here just to stay, which I'm happy about because we want to keep our membership,
What does the calendar actually look like for you guys? So what I want to know is, number one, like, what would you tell someone who's a young person who qualifies to be a part of Tarrant Young Dems? Like, which is the majority of, Tarrant County, it feels like, the average the medium Tarrant County member is a person in Tarrant County is 34. So that, it's up to 41, you could be a part of the org.
Yes.
So one, what would you tell someone who's maybe on the sidelines but want to get involved? And then two, what's the expectation of being involved? Like, what's the schedule? What's the what kind of work do they have to do? Hours? What would be the detail there?
First off, we have our meetings every fourth Wednesday of the month. That is a monthly thing. We try to make it not only like serious and put our points out there of what we want to do and our action items, but also make it fun, make it community building, some community building aspects to it. We all know people have full-time jobs or they're full-time students, so it can be hard just living life as it is. So we want to like kind of mix it up a little bit. I would say another thing is we often have action items. As we know, we're in Tarrant County, we're in ground zero, so who knows when we're going to need to put on a protest. So gravitate, bring them to a meeting, tell them what they can do next. Here we're doing this on this day. Here we're doing that on that day. Hey, you want to just have dinner? Let's go have dinner. We've actually had a few midnight breakfasts, which is really fun and invigorating. It gives us a chance to kind of break from our norm. Maybe not necessarily have an entire agenda, but just chill as young people in Tarrant County that who want to progress the Democratic mission forward.
I think you made a point of that there's a lot of different Democrat groups, and we've talked about that on the pod. And I see a little bit more collaboration happening amongst those and keeping track of what everybody's doing and sharing things that people are doing and collaborating together on events. Do you see that happening as well?
Yes, definitely. I wasn't seeing that when I first was kind of taking leadership over the club. So that's very hopeful just for Tarrant County as a whole, and just flipping Tarrant County is that it looks like we're coming together more. That's what we have to do if we want to win this county. You know, we have to, it's not going to be one club or even the Tarrant County Democratic Party. It's not just going to be them. It needs to be all of us. You know?
Yeah.
How would you guys, I guess, look at, you guys know that Tarrant County is the battleground. Republican consultants say this is the new Pennsylvania. Like, people are seeing this power. I mean, 2.3 million people. How behind the eight ball do you think we are? Like, do you feel like what are the resources you need to feel like you're getting ahead on this fight? Because I agree with you, Emeri. You said, man, it feels so depleting to do this work. And I think so many, like, even I think about just, we've been doing the podcast for 5 years, every Monday talking about this news, and just to see kind of how people care. And it just feels like if Fort Worth and Tarrant County isn't willing to fight, like we actually are, to me, it's not New York, it's not LA, it's what happens in places like here that's going to decide where democracy is. And that's why I'm so like shocked that there's not more people wanting to activate and realize that. How do we help young people see that they have that control and power to activate and wake up to take ownership of this county quickly? I think even like Arlington is a great example of like that place votes majority Democrat. It was one of the 5 most diverse cities in America. But you guys have a relatively Republican council, like there's not, that hasn't been tapped yet. So it seems like with all you guys growing and recruiting and vetting these high quality young people, we eventually have a bench of people who are also going to be able to do some amazing stuff in the future.
Well, that's our big goal, is just to have a lot of young people maybe even run for office in the next 1 to 5 years. So we want to, the goal is to replace a lot of these Republicans that are in blue areas, basically. And I thought if we just get like one win, like I feel like in Keller we got a huge win on the school board, and I feel like that excited a lot of people in Keller. And I think we'll even see a blue shift a little bit in Keller just because of that, because people are more involved. Yeah,
particularly on the Fort Worth side.
Yeah, can you give us context of what happened in Keller and what you guys do to help with that? Because that's one of my first times you guys popped up in my news.
Yeah, sure. Unfortunately, I am in Keller ISD. I live in Fort Worth, but I'm in Keller ISD. So essentially, the school board behind closed door meetings essentially sent forth a plan to split the district along 377. So the majority of the minority individuals who live in Keller ISD live on the Fort Worth side, so west of 377. And then the majority of white and more affluent areas of Keller ISD live on the east side of 377. They literally tried to split the district along the train tracks, which are actively going along 377. So
literally the wrong side of the tracks.
Literally the wrong side of the tracks, as I'm sure you have both heard.
Yeah.
as I said, I'm from Keller ISD. It's been really a crucial point for me to help school board candidates who have the same values as I do, and the same values that the majority, I think, of the people that live in Keller ISD do, such as protecting public education, fighting for special education, and just fighting for all constituents and all kids and teachers and administrators in Keller ISD, which we have not seen from the current school board. We were able to get, along with our efforts and a lot of people in Northeast Tarrant County, in Randy Campbell and Jennifer Erickson, for place 1 and place 2. We need to flip 2 more seats in Keller ISD to have a majority. 2 of those people are going to be on the ballot in May of 2026, so look out for that. But I think it's really crucial that we have these big wins and build upon them, and local leadership starting out, because that is where the most direct change happens to the constituents on the ground. So I think that's a really big push. So that's a big synopsis of that. And I wouldn't be surprised if they try to do it again. So don't hold your breath on that.
Oh, wow.
Yikes.
Yeah. And I think that's what the big fear of like what happened at Keller ISD, it's like, it's breadcrumbs to what now Tim O'Hare's doing, and it's getting bigger and bigger.
And don't forget, Tim O'Hare and Matt Krause both. Matt Krause advised him legally behind the scenes as well. And Tim O'Hare was also behind the scenes pushing for this as well. So don't forget that. It's all interconnected. It's all interwoven, and we need to stop it.
Yeah. And you're seeing that the Patriot Mobile dollars jumped into Deborah Peoples' campaign in District 5. The Patriot Mobile leadership is one of the people added to the commissioner's historical marker group. And so it's starting to filter in to other places.
But I think to their point about getting people to run in the future, I think the way that Fort Worth especially, but Tarrant County as a whole has been, is like there's a process by which you prepare yourself to run for office. And people kind of think you have to serve on a board or commission or be tapped by someone who's already in office before you're deemed like an appropriate candidate. And I think what I've been seeing across the country is young people just jumping in and saying, no, I'm ready to serve right now. And I'm guilty of being hesitant and being like, oh my gosh, they're only this years old. But they have proven themselves to actually be really good representatives. So I think the idea of being active in these spaces and going out and building community and then being willing to run for office is a viable way to get some of these seats, to have people that are seriously wanting to represent community versus being in it for some other motive.
Like, absolutely. Like, how awesome would it be if we had a person under 30, let's say, have a seat on the Arlington City Council? UTA makes up the majority of the population. We deserve to have a young representative, not only in Arlington City Council, but all across Tarrant County. So I think that would be really awesome to see, and that's what we want to build on.
Yeah, and that's where...
I mean, people got super excited about Fort Worth City Council and the drop in age that happened in 2021. And that wasn't even that huge of a drop. I mean, it was a huge drop because the people who left the council were kind of old, older than me. And then the new people were relatively young, but not like in their 20s. They're in their 30s, young families, that sort of thing. Yeah. So I think that the trend needs to keep moving in that direction.
Totally agree.
Yeah, and that's where it's like, when you look at Fort Worth, when you look at Arlington, it's the most diverse areas. It's also the areas that least vote. But it's also the areas where, if you can turn out, I mean, Arlington and Fort Worth combined is 57% of the county. And so I guess, what are some of does your strategies changes from like, trying to grab people from color in precinct 3 compared to, I know, like Sunrise Terrence, based in Arlington, like grabbing kids from the college campuses? How do you guys kind of look at strategy when it comes to the different parts of the county?
It's difficult because we're a whole county-wide club.
Yeah.
So like people are like, oh, why aren't you doing a thing in Mansfield? Why aren't you doing one in Cuomo? Why aren't you doing one in Grapevine? It's like, well, we are. We just wait. We'll be there soon, because at this time we rotate where we meet, and it's like, we usually do one, like this month we're meeting in the Grapevine area probably, or Bedford maybe. And then next month we'll be back in Fort Worth, and then we rotate. Because we have a lot of members in the northeast regions of Tarrant County, but we also don't want to forget about the biggest city in Tarrant County, which is Fort Worth. So I forgot your question.
Yeah, no, you're doing.
No, that's really great. I think that's a good idea to rotate it around like that.
Yeah, because like if you're a person that's really interested in coming to one of our meetings and you live in Southwest Fort Worth or in Mansfield, making the trek up to Northeast Tarrant is not easy. Particularly, you have to think about these people have to pay for gas money. As I previously said, we are not making livable wages here in Tarrant County, or nationwide for that matter. They have to have reliable public transportation, which we do not have in Tarrant County, or they have to have a vehicle. A lot of our members do not have a vehicle, and that's okay. But we have to factor that in our decision-making where we have these meetings and make them accessible as possible to the people, particularly young people of Tarrant County.
What are some candidates are you guys looking at or seats for 2026? What's some of the things you guys are
Definitely the judge race for sure. Of course, we want to take out Tim O'Hare. I would say the DA race as well. The county-wide races are the ones that excite me personally the most because I think they're some of the most winnable. But also State House, maybe at 94, would be a fun one to flip now that it's Tony Tinderholt has dropped out, or I guess retired, and then not retired. Then also I think 97 is interesting. But yeah, mainly the county-wide races are the ones that I think I'm going to plug myself into, just because I think those are the most winnable and very impactful.
I think we should also acknowledge that ST9 will be having a jungle election in November. We actually have a candidate, Taylor Ramette.
He's coming on the pod.
Yes,
Yeah.
Awesome. So glad to hear it. And the person who is running against him is crazy. She is the CCO, so the
Texas Liberty.
No, Patriot Mobile.
Patriot Mobile.
She is insane.
Yes.
She has spoken at the Commissioner's Court.
Lee
I think Leah.
Wansband or something like that.
I'm like, I don't want to mispronounce the last name.
Yeah.
Although, well, anyway. But she's going to be running for that, and it was really interesting to see Nate Slatsline announce, and then
just pull back out.
Yeah, he just pulled back out right after Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick was like, I'm endorsing Leah.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a really important race. I think we can flip it if we really hit the ground running like quick and now. Taylor has raised quite a bit of money, so that'll be interesting to see how much we can put in that. It does cover most of Tarrant County, so that is really crucial in putting in work in that race. Definitely for me also, county judge is going to be really crucial. Really one that I'm interested in helping out on as much as I can. I know a lot of our members, mostly that's going to be the race that they really want to dig their feet in and put as much work as they can in that. But that's where I would say where my mindset is on that.
Yeah. No, I learned Taylor would represent me, and Extended and I was like, let me see where I'm at.
Where the lines are.
Yeah, I'm like right on. I'm like, oh, snap, got to help this guy out. So I was like, you got to come on the pod. But I met him a couple times, and I'm still super thrilled that we have someone like him who has so much experience and wherewithal, but then also I just feel like the Texas palate. I just can't imagine someone not really giving trust to Taylor just once you meet him and talk to him for 2 minutes.
Yeah,
So we were talking with Allison Campolo about precincts and representatives as precinct chairs, and that there's a gap in those. Is that an area that you guys try to educate people about and get your members to serve in those roles?
Absolutely. I'm proud to say that we've had around 12 Tarrant Young Dems members sign up to become precinct chairs since March, which is really great to hear. We're lucky to have people that come to our meetings that are aware of what a precinct chair does and what its duties are, which is really powerful to see. I think that's a really important gap that we need to fill, because those are the bodies on the ground 7 days a week, informing their precincts, informing their community members of necessary items and factual information that they need to know to get out to vote. So I think that's a really crucial gap that we need to continue to fill on. But I'm really proud to say that we've had that many. Me and Hunter both here are precinct chairs. Happy to say that. But that's definitely a thing we need to continue to build on, not just for young people, but for older people. But we also have to recognize, not to be rude, but I think if you're a precinct chair, you need to actually be actively working your precinct.
Yeah, I think we've always had a really active precinct chair where I live, and you talked about young people moving and being more transient. I've lived in the same house longer than y'all have been alive, I think. And so that has not been an option for me, but I think keeping up with all the elections that we have, because even people who pay a lot of attention, I think, are unfamiliar with like the jungle primary you were talking about and all these different things. So the importance of having educated people on the ground to inform people so that they can go vote in this atmosphere of people trying to kind of suppress that.
I think like another important thing is to realize that if you have a precinct chair that is already installed in your precinct, why not adopt a precinct? I mean, for example, near me, I have 3 different precincts in my connecting areas to mine. However, like there's other ones in various parts near my precinct. So I think that's a great idea for people to think about as an alternative. If you really want to be active, why not just adopt another precinct? We need people everywhere. It's really crucial, really moving into 26 and beyond to do so.
So if you already have a precinct chair, you can figure out an area that you're familiar with. Maybe you know people because you work in that area, or you have other friends that live there that don't want to step up and do the actual job, but you can do that too. So that's good.
Yeah.
Good action item.
I love that. I actually want to ask, there's 2 ways I could take it, but one question I have is just around, I saw a recent article because I know we just got out of high school graduation, and basically they said this was the largest graduation class that surveyed, feeling hopeless about the future, not sure what the purpose of caring about where the world is going anymore. What do you guys actually like believe or see from the younger generation? Like, do you really believe like there's this apathy and just kind of like it is what it is, or is it actually not getting enough credit, and your generation should be getting more credit for how mobilized you are actually being?
I would say that I feel like there's definitely that sentiment around for young people, but I don't think that that's necessarily like means that they're gonna like not go anywhere in life or anything. I think that means that they are aware of the boundaries that they have to bounce over, jump over, and we're just have to fight harder than the generations above us. And I feel like that's new. You know what I mean? Like usually it's like, oh, I'm leaving a better world for my kid. Yeah.
And half the parents surveyed don't believe their kid's future is going to be as good as theirs.
Yeah, and so I feel like I think we're gonna have to be real resilient about just everybody, all the young people basically are gonna have to work real hard if they want to have any type of good life, because it's hard out here, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And does it feel like the incrementalism or like the system itself is not exciting to young people? And if you really want to activate young people, do we need to have more imagination? Do we need to have more boldness? Like, what do you guys think about like the current state of? I mean, I know you said you were a political wonk all your life, but what do you guys feel? And like, how do you get people excited to jump in?
That's a big question, because there's so many different elements to that. I think the mass protest movements we've been seeing all across the country are really key to bringing in young people, and not only bringing them in, but keeping them in and letting them know what their next steps can be to take action. A lot of people, not even young people, but just there's so many different events, so many different clubs, and so many different sects going around, statewide, locally, nationwide. It's kind of hard to find your place, but I think the protest movement and mass events all across the U.S. are a great way to pull those people in and tell them, hey, you're not alone. Because it can be hard to come to a meeting and where everyone is feeling the same thing, somewhat depleted, but you want to take action, but it's very boxed in. But I think those movements can be really good. I mean, we saw in the 60s and the 70s what those movements is, and I'm not saying it's going to be overnight, but I'm saying we need to continue that push almost on the monthly, sometimes
we have
weekly.
Another one, July 17th.
Yes. I think we should be having those. And so frequently I hear, hey, why don't you run for office? Hey, why don't you do more as a young person? Blah, blah, blah. Or I have older people say that we are the next generation of change and we need to be that now. So I think we really need to just build upon that and use our strengths as young people to make a rally cry nationwide, state, and locally for change for the future.
Yeah, I think what comes out of those events when people all come together is that feeling that you're not alone. Mm-hmm. Look at how many people are here that all were energized to come to this. Mm-hmm. And so having things there that then people can plug into to take action so that they don't lose hope and get despondent between those events.
Yes.
So I think those events have had that, like the tables with the different groups.
Yes, mutual aid groups are very crucial to have at protests because, like you said, you don't want to just, hey, come out to a protest and then leave them hanging. No,
Right.
That's not what we want to do. We want to pull you in and make sure you are set on what you need to do next. And I think the people want that as well. They don't want to just come. There's a reason they're coming to the protest to begin with. And we want to make sure we fulfill that duty as the Tarrant County Young Dems and just people that are really interested in a better future for our county and our country.
Yeah.
Well, I would love to know what can people do to get involved.
Well, we meet on the fourth Wednesday of every month. Like I said, we'll probably be meeting in Bedford this
July.
This July. Yeah. But and then the week after that, or the month after that, we'll be in Fort Worth because we know people that don't want to travel as far, which is completely understandable. But yeah, just come to our meetings. Hit us up on social media, Instagram, Facebook, any of those, because it's not only you're getting plugged into like a community that is like with like-minded individuals. Like our big goals are to push not only flip the county but push it more progressive as well, because that's what we think we need. As you were saying earlier, just young people are feeling kind of hopeless. And I think that's because we're not going in a progressive age.
How do you guys take of that in like what you saw in New York? Like when you saw, obviously New York is always 20 years ahead of everyone else, but like how do you see what we can learn from New York, and what should people in Tarrant County have grabbed from that in the sense of political strategy?
I think people always ask, like, oh, how do we get young people to come back to the Democratic Party? How do we get young men to come back to the Democratic Party? How do we get young people to come vote? And we have the answer. He did it. Zoran did it. If you look at the biggest voting block, it's between the age of 18 and 30. That more people showed up with that age block than any other one. So obviously people are pushing, especially young people, are pushing back against this moderate messaging, of this Eric Adams messaging, of Cuomo messaging. Like the people are tired of that. And I think Zoran's really proven that's the Joe Rogan of the left, is what we want to call it. Because throwing like $100 million to some podcast that no one's heard of, like the DNC's doing, that's not gonna fix your young person problem. It's gonna be bold, progressive ideas, and because people don't get excited over moderates. They don't.
And I saw you guys heavily involved in when Bernie came into town, the oligarchy tour. You heard Beto's message seemed pretty sharp. You can tell he's been crafting that. So like I guess being a part of that, what do you guys feel of like that feeling like it landed or clicking in Tarrant County?
No, it definitely landed. I will say I think it could have been a bubble effect. I hope it's not. But like Hunter said, we need to fight for the progressive future we deserve. Not only as young people, but as people across the country. If we want affordable healthcare, if we want public transit, if we want affordable higher education, those are the policies we need to fight for, and that's how we're going to bring young people in to get them engaged and get them energized to vote for our future, and fight for themselves and actually find a candidate that they see their values in. So I think that's a big thing we need to push. Bernie himself said when he was in town that the future of American politics runs through Texas, and I think we all know in this room that Tarrant County has a lot to play in that, and we need to fight like hell to turn it blue. So.
I think that was a great end to the interview. Thank you, Emeri. Thank you, Hunter, for joining the 817 pod. Just watching what you guys have done in just so little time is really inspiring. You have touched different parts of the county. If it was Keller, if it's college campuses, if it's Deborah Peoples' race in Fort Worth and bringing a progressive on council, you guys are doing a lot of work. So young people, if you really want to be a part of this, it's a really awesome group. They have an Instagram, like they said, you can connect and direct message. Their meetings are every fourth Wednesday, so be there and get clicked into the people who are actually making magic happen. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So it was great having a couple of very young people on the podcast, reminding me of the energy of my own children, and really lovely to see the work that they're doing in this community. And now we're going to dive into short story number 1, which is not quite as positive and uplifting, but looking at what the GOP mega bill and impact will be on Texas. So right before the 4th of July, I believe on the 3rd of July, there was a vote to move forward with the budget that many of us believe is going to be problematic and terrible. And that is the Trump GOP mega bill.
Yeah,
And we have
the
a Texas
big
Tribune
bullshit
article.
bill.
Sorry?
The big bullshit bill.
Yes. There's been a lot of alliteration around the various things because he calls it his big, beautiful bill, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, this bill is the biggest wealth transfer in American history from the poorest and most vulnerable, and just giving that money to billionaires in the form of enormous tax cuts. It's adding between 3 to 4 trillion to the deficit. And I know trillion is a really hard number for people to wrap their heads around, so here's some context. 1 million seconds is 11 days. 1 billion seconds is 31 years. 1 trillion seconds is 31,000 years.
Wow.
So longer than human civilization has existed. That's how long it takes to count to a trillion. And so we're adding $3 to $4 trillion.
4 civilizations.
There you go. Yeah. Adding that to the deficit. And which one thing I learned today listening to a Planet Money episode is that the deficit is already so high that a quarter of all of our tax dollars just goes to paying off the interest on the debt that America has. Like, that's insane. The last time that we had a surplus was when Bill Clinton left office. Like, that's so wild how out of control it has gotten. And it's just so that we can give billionaires more American tax dollars.
And I guess what is the argument that this is going to be some trickle down situation? Because I know that's what they talk about all the time when they talk about doing things for people who are wealthy, that they'll reinvest and that they'll be, but they just seem to be sitting on their money like dragons on a pile of gold.
Yes, 1,000,000%.
And what the, I was reading a blog and they're just talking about like Donald Trump and billionaires actually believe America is over. Like when you look at Ray Dalio's book about every 200 years, power changes and the empires or whatever. In his book, like, is that they're all accepting that America is on the back end, and so let's just
rate it for all it's worth.
It's kind of like a private equity situation, right? Like, oh, JCPenney's going down.
Squeeze every last dollar out.
Yeah, and that to me is what this feels like. And so, right, this is when you look at Heather Richardson's book, The Sum of Us, anytime black and brown people get involved in something, they just stop it or ruin it, right? If it was access to public pools, we talked about it. If it was access to public education, if it's access to buying a house, it's like now America has become a majority minority. Let's make this as miserable as possible for you guys to figure it out.
Well, they basically say, as some of the notes here say, every Republican president since Reagan has exploited the deficit by providing a tax cut to the rich and eroding the social safety net, which I think is really interesting because I think people like our guests earlier today, people in their early 20s, I don't even think they know what a social safety net feels like.
They've never seen a world where it was,
And so when you talk, and then everybody with our, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps kind of mentality feels like they're going to be a billionaire someday. Yeah. So they feel like they're going to be negatively impacted if something is taken away from billionaires because that will make it so that they can't be a billionaire someday. None of us are going to be billionaires.
Yeah.
And so to take away from a social safety net where people have a minimum of something to live and eat and have health care, it's not just something that people in their 20s necessarily have ever experienced in their lives because it's been being reduced
and what
all
little
this time.
Yeah, and what little they've seen, they keep seeing that get further slashed and cut. Like that's the first thing that gets cut, and that's what leads to what EJ was saying about like the hopelessness of younger generations.
And I think I'm operating off of two bets, we were just talking about happiness and joy and all that before we press record. But to me, the two things I'm operating off of, because I want to operate off worst case possible. Worst case possible, if you look at the data, 17% of the world GDP is in 83 million boomers' bank accounts. So 17% of the world GDP. That population is predominantly white. So then what happens is the safety net is going to be when that passes, there's going to be a bunch of Gen Zers who are going to be able to retire at 40. And I always tell my black and brown friends, it's like, yeah, we're going to be the ones with the $250,000 jobs, but we're the only ones having to work. And so you're going to have a much more elevated safety nets for the kids they want to protect. The black and brown kids are going to be screwed unless somehow they can find a way in the next 10 to 20 years. But then I'm also, the other second thing I'm operating off is they're projecting 16 trillionaires by 2065.
Jesus Christ.
And that is going to come from, so those numbers you talk about, imagine one person have a bank account of civilization in their pocket. That is also showing that we're actually already in not just a state-controlled society. We're controlled in a king-controlled society, and the kings are fighting over who that's going to be today. And so the other thing is, I don't know if Elon Musk or Sam Altman are going to treat humanity like house cats, or are they going to treat us like roaches? And so that's the two things I have to prepare. And when I look at me and my wife, why we don't have kids, this is the reason. This is the exact reason, is because I don't know a through line where it makes sense to have kids. I just can't figure it out.
But they seem to want people to have kids because they keep doing things to try to encourage people to have more kids.
But then all of the reasons why people are scared to have kids, they just make it worse and worse and worse.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so those are the two, like, this is what that bill represents, is that they have given up on America. And so for me, I say that now, if I'm talking to young people and black and brown people, it's like, we've always dealt with this. But I do think potentially, if we realize that hard is coming, like, there is going to be more difficult. Like, you even heard it in their souls, like the two young Dem cats, they were like, yeah, we're just beat up. And I think they know, oh, it's going to be hard for us. And I think if we all decide to do the hard thing, maybe we can save it. And maybe we can get through on the other side, because the numbers is on our side, right? The population of white Texans has nosedived, right? We're like down white Texans, like minus 40% since 2010 to 2025. But yet the overall number of Texans over 18 has risen 500,000 people. And that's because of black and brown people. So it's like, the millennials are the most educated. Gen Z is still an educated group. So that consciousness being awakened could be what saves us. But it has to come with consciousness plus courage. Not consciousness on like, oh, let me get mine and not worry about everyone else. And that's the battle.
Yeah. Well, and also, like, anything done can be undone. Like, we can, turn this around anytime. And
yeah, I saw some narrative about the tax cuts being made permanent, but I don't know necessarily. You can't make anything permanent, because the next people that are elected can vote a different way.
They just made it to where they don't automatically expire,
Right.
like the first time Trump was elected, which he purposefully did so that people felt obligated to vote for him.
Yeah.
So to get these tax cuts.
I would also be interested in your guys' take here on, because we're also, I think, discussing like the end of kind of this. Are we on this end of capitalism in America? And you see what happened in New York with a Democratic socialist winning. Are we starting to realize that we're going to have to decide a new way? Because eventually they're using AI and robots to produce in production, and humanity is not judged by the economic output that we deliver. Does the new question need to be have is, how do we actually become a society that's okay with raising taxes? Like, that's, when I look at Europe and everyone says they want to be like Europe, yeah, but that's because their taxes are much higher as an individual person. The middle class's taxes in Europe pays a lot more than the middle class of America. And if we want to build a society where it is free healthcare, free education, free all that, we eventually have to be okay with mayors in cities raising taxes, county commissioners raising taxes, but in Texas for sure, that is a death sentence. So what Trump and everybody's doing is just passing the ball down the court until, again, a blue person decides to do the right thing, and then they hammer us, and then we're back where we are.
I don't even think it's necessarily a matter of having to raise taxes for the average person. It's more a matter of getting the ultra wealthy to pay their fair share of taxes, and just spending taxes on things that benefit people, that benefit the average person, that benefit the most vulnerable.
The narrative is definitely harder to explain as to what you get for what you're putting in. And I think that what I see is the people who are in power now don't want the government doing anything. They want everything in private hands. Mm-hmm. But when you put everything in private hands, you don't necessarily get
You get the worst, most expensive outcome.
Yeah, and you get people who don't want to take care of the least of us and the people that need support and help, because that whole mentality, like I mentioned before, of everybody should just be able to take care of themselves and pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. And nope, not everybody has boots, and all the things that we constantly bring up in this area.
Also, the origin of that phrase meant doing something impossible. So
Exactly. You can't pull yourself by. Yes. Try to picture that.
Yeah, and I went back to this article, and we'll put it in the show notes. Government spending as a share of GDP in 2000 to 2023. U.S. is last on this list. So the people who spend more: Canada, Netherlands, UK, Sweden, Germany, France. This is why Europe's government spending tends to be higher than America's by about 8 to 12% of GDP.
Yeah.
So that's a large number of percentage.
Yep.
And so...
and also the article that EJ's mentioning is from the Texas Tribune, which I would definitely recommend checking out because it gives you a good idea of how this bill will affect Texas in particular.
And that's the other part with the bill was the ICE part. That was the other big kicker. The amount of raise in ICE. I mean, ICE's money before this was already more than the Marines.
Exactly. So here's some context for that, is that America spends more on just military stuff than the next 9 countries combined. And now the ICE budget there are only 15 countries in the entire world with more military spending than ICE.
And the difference between, and I'm not saying, I know Fort Worth just gave its proud that we're a defense city, but to me, I am not here for saying war or anything, but the Marines was a proactive group of people who went out to seize a moment, quote unquote. ICE is about kidnapping and dealing with
kidnapping
the inside.
Our neighbors.
So if their mindset is that America's going to crap and they're just exploiting it, now they know the anger is going to come within. Well, let's create alligator Alcatraz for anyone who wants to speak out to this, because now you're worried about your domestic people acting out. And
the numbers they're throwing around are not even people who are in this country, not legally. It's like all people of a certain category.
Yeah,
of race.
The tweet Anne's referencing is I saw there's roughly 11 million undocumented people in America, but they're talking about getting rid of 65 million people in America. Well, what number correlates to that 65 million? The number of Hispanic people in the U.S.
Yep.
Insane. So one way that they're saying that all these tax cuts won't explode the deficit is they're trying to cut government spending, and that first thing to get cut is Medicaid. So that means 300,000 Texans are going to lose their health insurance through these Medicaid cuts. And then they're also cutting SNAP benefits, so food stamps. The number of how much will be cut, they haven't quite figured out how many people will be affected, but it's not an insignificant number.
And isn't that how they typically do these laws? They don't look at the whole impact of them, and then they just go ahead and pass them, and then they have to clean up afterwards. I mean, it seems like
a lot of them said they had no idea what was even in the bill.
900 pages or whatever it was. It seems like many of them probably didn't read it.
Yep. With lots of revisions too. So it's like, even if you read one, it changed the next day.
Yeah. And I think another area that's, close to my heart is clean energy incentives are being cut, worsening climate change, causing more climate catastrophes.
I saw an Echo Heights article actually about this and how they were losing funding for some of their things because of this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so a lot of what was in the Inflation Reduction Act that Biden passed had a lot of clean energy incentives that wouldn't stop climate change, but it would help slow it down. You could get a rebate for buying an EV or getting solar panels and stuff like that. And then businesses had their own incentives to pollute less. And then now all of that's gone, all removed. So not only are we not slowing down climate change, but now there's no brakes. They can just, we can fast forward to a climate catastrophe at the same time that Trump is trying to cut FEMA. So when there is a climate disaster, no help anymore.
Yeah.
Or at least much less help than what we need.
I guess those billionaires will just take care of us all.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
It's
Got to
heartbreaking.
pray on that one.
Yep.
But that the one part I did see also there that Ted Cruz had a couple initiatives that he had his hands on, and one of them was Trump accounts.
Yes.
Well,
Which
they
was
originally were
basically-
called baby bonds.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then they renamed it.
So
Yeah.
that's what was the most insane thing to me is that baby bonds are actually a really good policy incentive to address like inequality, wealth inequality. So the way it's supposed to work is that every baby born gets $1,000 put into a savings account that will grow until they're 18. And the government will add money to that account based on how wealthy your family is. So Bill Gates' family, they get no extra money. But a poor family, they get an extra $2,000 every year so that when that kid reaches 18 and they finally have access to that money, they have more of a head start than a kid normally does. And this disproportionately affects Black and brown families to address those long-term wealth inequalities, those generational inequities.
But Ted, they did it in a way where it's about you as a family member can contribute up to $5,000 a year to these Trump accounts. So what it's really just doing,
The rich
is
get richer.
the richer gets richer,
Poor get poorer.
and and it's the
Because
government
you have
is
to
not
have
pitting-
$5,000 to put in yourself
Yeah,
in
a
order
year.
to take advantage of this.
and you get to accumulate that over 18 years. And to me, like what you were talking about is a smart policy because now you're taking government dollars today, pitting that 7% return on it for 18 years. That's now allowing to pay for these kids' colleges rather than turning it into
Or a down payment on
Yeah,
a
or a
house.
home, yeah.
Just build wealth in any way.
And rather than bankrupt doing the FAFSA or the Pell Grants, where now you're just doing it on a loan side.
And the Pell
then
Grant's going away too.
they held on to it. The
Yeah.
Pell
Okay,
Grants,
good.
they held on to it. But so it's like this is a way to be proactive. Which is now a debt actually becomes an equalizer. But again, it's going to come down to how white adults who are between 25 and 55 behave when they're 75 to 55. How they vote is going to be a big part, because what happens when you get the money? Do I change up? Once which I can blame the boomers, but when the wealth transfer goes down, how do we vote? I think that's going to be a kicker to how, because do they become protectionists like their grandparents or their parents, or do they stay on their progressive policies? Because a lot of people are worried like, oh, you're progressive when you're younger, but when you get older,
make money.
yeah. But when you get older, and I agree,
That doesn't
Wesley,
happen anymore.
I agree. But when you and I are old and wrinkly, and we'll be able to say
I did.
There's
we
no-
came together.
there's-
We came together as people.
There's no way you could convince me not to care about other people.
Wesley will always care about people.
We just got to get everyone. But and I don't want you guys to know, I came from like preparing for the worst case possible. I'm not saying any of this is.
Yeah, I know. We need to figure out a way to.
No, but I think it's important for people to have the worst case possible of an option.
Yeah, be prepared
Yeah,
for
and
it.
then and then what we can do. That's why mobilizing now, getting involved with Tarrant Young Dems now, matters, is because the fight, which our next two stories are showing,
Well, and didn't this come down to one person?
Literally-
voting?
Yep.
Yeah.
One person.
Well, in the Senate, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. If someone was sick that day, the world would be a very different
Or
place
just-
right now.
Had
Decided
a
to do
soul,
the right thing.
courage, boldness again.
Yep.
And that's. I think we just have to accept that we're in the fight now, and we're deciding that this bill, it is what it is, or we are going to start taking
No, the
ownership.
The second we can, we're going to undo all of this damage.
But I think that it takes all of us to. I get it. I'm just saying that we are in the war. It is time to fight for democracy, and you're either fighting for democracy or you're not. That's all I'm saying. The line, like I think people need permission to realize when to start standing up. We are in it. It's time, and so.
Yeah, that whole thing about waiting until something directly impacts you in order to care about stuff. I think that people are still in that stage. A lot of people.
Correct.
That don't know
100%.
how this is going to negatively impact them until they see it happen to someone they know. Kind of like
Yeah.
the ICE stuff that's been happening when it happens to your neighbor or someone that you've seen at your place of business or where you shop on a regular basis. the little cart left with nobody there to push the cart.
Yeah.
You know, these are the things that then start impacting people. But I don't think
And that's what,
this
like,
has
Keller-
sunk in
yeah.
for people yet.
And that's why Keller happened, is because it
Affected them
everybody.
directly.
Yeah, moderate Republicans were also like, oh, I guess, y'all were right. So it's like, but if we're going to wait to that moment, we still probably got a couple years until that moment happens for most people.
And in the meantime, that deficit is just going up.
Yeah. And I think it's for us, if you're a listener right now, it's time to be a leader. If you're a meme creator on Reddit, it's time to be an organizer. If you're someone who has any power, it's time to, I've been kind of working on it because I've been trying to prepare, like, when's my next, pep talk. But it's, we have to have our GPS, right? You have to use your gifts, whatever your gifts are. If it's talking on a mic, if it's editing video, if it's painting on the wall, whatever your gifts are, we got to use it for power, which is P is power. It's our what's your power? What kind of privilege do you have? What kind of access proximity? That P is your power, and then S is support system. It takes all of us. All of us is together, and we navigate with our GPS. Our
Did you
gifts,
make
our
this
power.
up, or
Yes,
is
I
this
did.
somebody
Yes, I
else?
did.
Okay, I
all
like
right.
it.
I know. Come on now. I don't just come out of my brain all the time.
You read a lot, though. You have a lot of sources and things, so I don't necessarily know for sure when you've
That's
gotten
that's
an
true.
idea
But you
from
like that
someone
one.
else.
I just said that in public. That was my first public time saying that, GPS.
I use my GPS everywhere I go, but I'm going to
Come
start
on
thinking
now.
about it in
Your
those
gifts,
terms.
Your power and your support system. If we can all navigate with that GPS, we can get this to the right destination.
There are two other points that affect Texas that come up in this bill, and that is that Cruz apparently got school choice tax credits for those who donate to nonprofits providing scholarships for private schools, which I'm not quite sure I understand. Is it encouraging people to pay for other people's kids to go to private school and they get some kind of tax credit for doing that?
It seems like what that's kind of what it is that the purpose of this is to lessen how bad the Texas charter school
vouchers,
school voucher nonsense is. So EJ, you read this too, so you work in education, so you might understand this better than me. But the way it works is that anyone can donate to a nonprofit that provides scholarships to private schools, and then that person who donated gets a tax credit, either $1,800 or if you do certain things, it can be $5,000, which isn't that much considering all this works. But
the part that's mind blowing to me, at least from how I process it, was like, we already created a big budget item to fund the voucher program over our public schools.
But that's in Texas, and this is federal.
And so, then what I'm saying is, now does that participate in Texas where you've already over-indexed money to the voucher program? And now this is only I can donate to the voucher program system in Texas. So that means if I'm in an underfunded public school, or if I wanted to write a check to my public school district, I couldn't do anything to it. I couldn't help support it. And I just fathomed the idea of, like, why did we not think of these ideas back in the day? Like, because you never thought public schools were something you can donate to because it was the government. And what I think the crazy magic trick in all this is, like, somehow they're positioning the government as, oh, this is private entities, private schools. And now it's okay to, like, fund them directly as a rich person and write a check and get a tax write-off. But they never gave that kind of policy to traditional school districts we've always had.
Well, if their whole purpose is to destroy public schools, then maybe that's the point.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, that's also going back to Ted Cruz's last one about the given the Trump accounts. Is he said it's to promote free market capitalism to young people and teach them the value and benefits of it. And everything has an agenda to how they want us to live our lives.
Yeah. Also, we didn't talk about it just then, but for Cruz to rename baby bonds Trump accounts, what a bootlicker. That's so weird and creepy.
I thought it wasn't even real.
Yeah.
There's so many things running around, like on TikTok or whatever. I thought that can't be true. But then when they sent out money during COVID, they sent out checks that were like Trump checks. So he wants to have his name on stuff. Clearly he wants to have his name on stuff. He puts it on buildings, all the things. And so this is just a perpetuation of
But
if the
putting
Trump-
his name on
this
things.
just went into effect, and they're not going to access that money for 18 years, and he still wants them to be called Trump accounts. Then that's weird.
I mean, very similar to names on buildings.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
And it goes to the Ted Cruz and Mark Rubio. All these cats are fighting for, because technically he can only have 2 terms. They're all fighting for who gets the seat.
Who's going to be the
next.
anointed one for the
Yeah.
next go round?
It's pathetic.
Yeah.
One thing that's weird that I noticed is the only pork that Cornyn tried to shove into this big bullshit bill is one for NASA to move the Space Shuttle Discovery from Virginia in the Smithsonian Museum to Houston. Because apparently when the Space Shuttle program ended, they were supposed to get put in places like relevant to the missions. And Houston didn't get one, but California and Virginia did. And I'm like, fine. I mean, there should be a space shuttle in the Smithsonian, but he wants to spend like millions of dollars to move it across the country.
Is there a place for it? Do they even have a place for it?
I mean, there's room for it. There's a replica of a space shuttle.
Oh, so they want a real one.
I don't know. Weird.
Yeah.
But the one good thing, like the only good thing I found in this whole bill is that Cornyn did get an extra $10 billion for NASA to be used on the Artemis missions that are going to be the next time that we're finally on the moon.
Yeah.
So as an avid space lover, I think that's good,
Yeah.
but, silver lining on a polished turd.
So our next 2 short stories circle back to Tarrant County. We've focused a lot on Tarrant County, but there's been a lot to focus on. So the second short story is that Tarrant County has approved $250,000 with a law firm and the article says, fight racial gerrymandered lawsuit maps.
Yeah, not a great headline.
Which is a little confusing because in 2 ways. Literally, the firm that they hired is the firm that came up with the maps that are now being challenged. And so my assumption would be that firm is going to be fighting to keep those maps, not to undo the racial gerrymandered maps. But the county commissioners court met. There were some questions in that meeting. I watched it live. I was not there, unfortunately, but I watched it live. And there were some questions by some commissioners about how they went about coming up with this contract and who was eligible to be putting in a proposal to fill this contract. And what I found the most interesting was that the DA's office was there, the district attorney's office, and they were asked, are you capable of defending the county in this case? And they said, yes, we are capable. So why in the world are we paying
was a big part.
$250,000 to a firm from Virginia to defend these maps, which they're not going to do because they came up with these maps. So they're literally fight the maps, as the article said. They're going to defend the maps. Well, and one of the questions that came up with our guests earlier today was like, what can people do and how do they continue to work and do things when they might not win in every situation? And I think to that point, it's important to show up at these meetings and point out how terrible and flawed and awful the things that they're doing are so that more people are learning, even if they have the votes, even if they have the ability to just plow over no matter how many people show up and speak out against.
Yeah, my big concern with this lawsuit is courts move slow, and this isn't going to be a one and
That's
done.
true.
It is absolutely whatever happens, it's going to take a long time, and then it's going to go to appeals, and then that's going to go to appeals.
And there's an election in 2026.
Exactly. So there are already people lining up to run for these seats and like fundraising, and like we've already heard rumors on who might run and theorizing about who we need to convince to run. But like they need to know what district they're running for, what district they live in. And if these maps are going to stick, if they're going to get, undone back to something less racist, we need to know that immediately. And also, it's not going to just be $250,000 of taxpayer money that Tarrant County residents are paying this Virginia law firm. Like, when it goes to appeals, inevitably, we're going to have to pay them again and again. Like, they're going to make a lot of money off of this racistly gerrymandered map that they haphazardly made. It's going to do a lot of damage.
And it's just crazy because they're gutting resources from JPS, from
Yep.
maintenance.
From road.
From-
Next time you're
yeah.
annoyed about potholes, keep in mind that the county is spending money on this lawsuit that
Yep.
they knew was going to come.
With the DA saying that they could have defended it, so there might not even have been a need to hire outside counsel.
Exactly. Just stealing from taxpayers to give to private firms, just like the big bullshit bill.
Yeah. And it goes back to, are they trying to kill it? Are they trying to kill the systems that we've had because they realize they're going to lose them by the numbers, so might as well break them.
Mm-hmm.
Which goes to, it's not just about money, it's also about how do they create narration. So like this whole historical marker thing, I think is another big one. It's short story number 3. The LGBTQ marker got suspended because Tim O'Hare didn't like that a marker was going in front of the Rainbow Lounge. Not only did they, I guess, suspend that process and say that they can't do that, they actually added an additional conservative people to that commission who decides on that vote. I believe, Wesley, you looked more into detail of who's actually on that vote. I only know the people that's from the Star Telegram article, but what did you see based off the commission?
Well, even that's being generous. I tried to find who is on the historical commission right now. You can't find it anywhere online of who's on right now. The best I could find was who was on the commission in 2023. So I have those names, and I have the 5 new people that 4 of them were added by Republican Matt Krause. 1 was added by Democratic Commissioner Lisa Simmons. But then when I was looking into who these people on this list were and how they vote, I found that 12 of them were Republicans and 6 were Democrats. And also, I just wanted to quickly say, we've talked about being precinct chairs. One of the best perks of being a precinct chair is you have access to Voter Access Network. And so I can look up people's information and what elections that they've voted in. So if you like being nosy, go be a precinct chair.
Yeah,
I'm interested to know whether or not, did they grow the overall number,
It
or
is
were they down?
It's 19 total. So we know that much, but we don't know who from 2023 is still
there.
on. Yeah.
Because boards and commissions on the city's website are listed, and
Yep.
it shows their terms and how long they've been there, and it shows if there's openings, and
There's a website there's a webpage on the county's website that has, when they meet, the minutes, the archived minutes, but when you click on members, fully blank.
and so the minutes don't list who is in attendance.
They haven't met this year.
Oh, there you go.
Or at least it doesn't show an archived meeting from this year.
one of the people added, Tammy Nakamura,
Patriot
is
Mobile.
really affiliated with Patriot Mobile. When she, I believe, ran for something in Precinct 3, it's looking like the Grapevine Calloway ISD board. Patriot Mobile spent over $130,000 on Tammy, including $54,000 for block walkers.
I wonder if any of these people have any knowledge or understanding of history and historic state.
I'm glad you brought that up, because when I looked at the people that I could confirm on the 2023 list, they were all in their 70s. Every single one of them. I thought that was odd. And then when I looked at the new names, there's a lot of 30-year-olds who clearly moved to Texas a few years ago and have voted Republican in every single election. I couldn't find any information on what
Their bios,
relevance to history
Because whenever
they have.
anybody gets appointed to a border commission in Fort Worth, they attach their bio to the motion to appoint them, and all the council members can look at that and read the bio and know who it is that they're appointing to things.
Yeah.
Couldn't find that for anyone.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Another thing I wanted to add of why this is so relevant about filling the historical commission with these radical conservative people is it's not just that they're trying to stop LGBTQ history from being commemorated. It's anything that doesn't follow their white Christian nationalist ideals. You had Simmons say, "You don't get to rewrite history because you don't like it or what it includes. This court and these court members should not be in the business of gatekeeping history, especially when it's rooted in discrimination and political interference." And then you also have Todd Camp from Yesterqueer say, "When one community's story is absent, the historical record is incomplete." So it's concerning.
And I love that right there.
Exactly. It's concerning that this might be another step to the far right.
And then the judge's objections to this were not even what was on the plaque. I mean, it was literally a plaque about history of LGBTQ history in Fort Worth. And he went straight for the things that just rile people up and make people angry and mad. And that's not even what's there. So he just states that as fact and gets people riled up. And then they don't know the true facts, which goes back to not recording history properly.
Exactly.
And this is also why I think what's tough right now about quote unquote being a progressive and like trying to get people involved civically is that like, I think most people right now maybe aren't even progressive, but progressive somehow has come. If you believe you should have religion freedom and you can believe whatever you want to believe, you can marry whoever you want to marry, you could work wherever you want to work. Like all people matter and their stories matter. Like
basic human decency.
Basic human decency. But somehow this is now called progressive. And that's where I just think of like, how do you get people who maybe aren't politically activated just to see like most people believe in those things, and how do we start there? I'm not even here to talk about what we should do about capitalism, about what we should do about police. I ain't even touched those things. We just said basic things here are somehow being progressive now. And that's just crazy to me. We got to figure out how to get that figured out so more people can then at least join Tarrant Young Dems and what the Democrats are doing to become precinct chairs. Because if you believe in those things, I guess you are a part of us.
Human decency and the golden rule.
There you go.
So wrapping up our 3 short stories after our fabulous guests earlier, we have wins and losses, and then we will be ending on actions as we always do. And the win that I have to bring to you all is something that just happened last night. So Historic Northside District is doing some events in Marine Park, and this is, I think, their 4th one that they had last night, and it was the Sonidos Northside 4th celebration on the 5th, so a little bit confusing. They started off with a parade in the morning on North Main, and they ended with a celebration in the park in the evening that had Latin Express and vendors serving food and vendors selling different things. And it was a great celebration, ending with fireworks before it's closed. But the good thing about sharing after the fact is because you have another opportunity to join the celebration coming up in September, because the next one is the Sonidos del Summer Bitty Bitty Back to the Park on September 13th. So that'll be another fun time to come together with folks on North Side. And it was a great time last night.
Very cool. I
love it. Don't you have a win as well?
Oh, well, yeah, just a quick win is that in the old RAR distillery, they've moved off of South Main, and Blue Flag Distillery is going in their old place. I've met the guy. He's come to a few near Southside events. Solid dude. It's going to be the largest single malts distillery, I think in America is what he said. They have 2 of the biggest, distillers. But the story that I really like about it is the reason it's called Blue Flag is starting in the pandemic, he would put a blue flag on his porch whenever his neighbors could just come and hang out. And so I love that. Like, that's a good concept. I might start doing that. But yeah, it's such a good idea for that neighborhood too, to just be like, I love anyone who's community minded, and like in the South Main Village, it's such a community minded neighborhood. So I'm looking forward to him being
growing the community beyond his front porch.
Exactly.
It's fantastic.
I'm going to hold my wins because my wins are also actions. So I'm going to go into my loss. My loss is Fort Worth does not need another nickname. All right. Fort Worth Report has a new article out, and it starts with Cowtown has a new nickname that's really taken off. The aviation and defense capital of Texas. Not only do I think we should not be the epicenter of war here in Fort Worth, but we do not need another nickname, and especially a nickname that's led by Governor Abbott. We received the designation from Governor Abbott after the House concurrent resolution was signed June 17th by Greg Abbott. The designation written by Rep. Charlie Guerin and John McQueenie and sponsored by former Senator Kelly Hancock. Again, I also think that everything's politics. So in Fort Worth, it's not crazy that Governor Abbott is making us the defense capital because, like cowboys, we sell stockyards to sell Republican meat. This feels a little Republican meat to me, and so it's my loss.
Yeah, plus we already have Panther City.
The best one.
Yeah.
How
best,
many are there? There's so many. And every
Funky
time
Town.
Visit Fort Worth comes up with a new thing just for the year, everybody puts it out there in articles.
The
saying that
Unexpected
this is the
City.
new,
That one too.
new
That one I
mon-
do like. I was
Really?
offended by it at first, but I mean, I did videos for Unexpected City.
Yeah.
And I feel like
Company
it just
man.
keeps coming up over and over again. And I'm like, it's offensive at first because, like, what's wrong with us? Why wouldn't you expect us to be cool? But, like, we do a lot of unexpectedly cool things here.
I do appreciate the creative effort of Unexpected City. I did.
Well, and that's,
appreciate
I mean,
that.
I think just the arguments about whenever there's a campaign for tourism, people think they're trying to change the whole name of the city or the mantra of the city or whatever. So that's not even true. I mean, every year they come up with something to try to catch the imagination to sell tourism in Fort Worth. And it's not changing who we are. It's just highlighting some aspect of us.
Yeah. Plus, it's not a new nickname. It's just adding to the vocabulary of how we talk about Fort Worth.
Yeah.
Well, like Unexpected City and like Panther City kind of play similar parts of the story of like, oh, we're a sleepy. You think we're a sleepy town and we ain't got a lot of things going on, but pow, we actually got a lot going on.
Yeah.
So, any losses for you guys? I know we have a lot to also bring up.
Well, I think we did talk about the fact that there was some major flooding on the 4th of July in Kerr County and massive loss of life and young children attending summer camp. So that is just a loss for all of us. I don't know. There's been a lot of accusations about whether there was predictions. There's been flooding in the past where lives were lost. And these facilities are located in places that have a tendency to do this. But the loss is definitely that there are people who have lost loved ones, and this is incredibly sad for our community.
Appreciate you, Ann, for sharing that. Now moving on to actions, things that we can do to continue to make this a better place. July 17th, we're having the Good Trouble rally out in Burnett Plaza, because continuing that momentum from No Kings and Hands Off protests. And so we're going to continue that with July 17th. Come out, see people. There's going to be booths, places to get organized. Tarrant Young Dems is going to be there. So that's my action for everyone.
The Good Trouble rally is commemorating the 5-year anniversary of the death of John Lewis, who was the person who came up with the terminology of get into good trouble. And I had the pleasure of meeting in person a few years back. So it will be an opportunity to meet other people from grassroots organizations and mutual aid organizations that are doing good work in our community and helping with that good trouble.
Hell yeah. And something I want to add is there's one weekend left to go see A Strange Loop at Circle Theater. I went and saw it this weekend, and it is a good show. It is a bold show. It's the first time that it's been performed outside of the Broadway cast, and the fact that it is having its regional premiere in Fort Worth, being a very personal musical about a big black gay man, is very surprising and makes me feel proud of Fort Worth to see something like that happening here. So, Strange Loop at Circle Theater.
Well, there you have it, another episode of the 817 podcast. Thank you for joining us every week. If this is the first time you listen, go ahead and subscribe and share with a friend. And we'll be back next Monday without me, as Ann and Wesley are going to bring you a special show.